You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. On the show today, we got a great series to preview, Mets versus Phillies. This is where the season gets fun. 7 of the Mets' last 16 games are coming against Philadelphia. In the first segment, I want to talk about the importance of this matchup down the stretch. Second segment, we'll get into your typical series preview. Then we're going to close the show talking about Kodai Senga, who could be returning as soon as he's eligible to return off the IL in the last week of this season. Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use the code all in lowercase LockedOnMLB to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Now, the New York Mets are about to go into Philadelphia for this series against the Phillies, and it is going to be a crazy atmosphere. What I wanted to do to open up the show today is just dismiss the notion that the Mets have a chance to win the National League East. That's a conversation we can have next weekend if everything breaks right. And by everything breaks right, I mean the Mets win every game and the Phillies lose every game, essentially. Because let's just say the Mets swept the Phillies this weekend, which would be the only way you're really going to get in. All right, that gets you to 5 games back. Then the Mets would have to sweep the Nationals, and let's just say the Phillies, they only win 1 game in their next series, which is against a good team, the Brewers. All right, well, now we're talking. Now it's 3 games back going into a 4-game set against the team. The door's wide open, okay? And yeah, there's a world that could happen. If the Mets do sweep the Phillies this weekend, we can have that conversation. But you should not be going into this weekend expecting or wanting a sweep. Because really at this point, you just have to think about getting into October and winning this series is all that matters right now. Because really the way I look at it, okay, the Phillies are the biggest obstacle standing in the Mets' way of making the playoffs. It is that simple. Yes, there's the Braves. And of course, you're still looking up at the Padres and the Diamondbacks. But even with that series against the Braves, where we do think the season could be hanging in the balance whenever you get there, you're playing the 7 games against Philly first. 7 of your next 10 games come against the Phillies. And how the Mets do in those games is going to shape the final week of their season in a significant manner. You win this series, you win the next one, you go 5-2 against Philly, and let's just say you beat Washington or sweep Washington, you're probably going to that series against the Braves with a chance to maybe clinch. I mean, it could really be that drastic if you are able to go on that level of a run through the next 10 games. Now, let's just say the other side of it. The Phillies beat you 5 of 7. Now, if you're fortunate, maybe you sweep the Nationals and you make it a 5-5 stretch, and maybe it's a push. Or the Braves are a game up going into that series, and you're still able over that final week to salvage things. But there's another world where the Braves handle their business on their schedule, and you go into that matchup with Atlanta, and now all of a sudden you got to basically save your season with every single game. If the Mets get beaten down by the Phillies, they could be in a really bad spot. And the season can slip away from you very quickly. So, yeah, sure. If the Mets were to win 6 of 7 or all 7 against the Phillies, that will have some real ramifications on the NL East, and we can have a very exciting conversation about that a week from now if things just break the right way. But this series and the rest of this season is just about making the playoffs. So I wanted to first dismiss that and then talk about the other side of this. And to me, one of the interesting components about this is the mental edge that beating the Phillies in Philadelphia will have on this team moving forward. They've done it. They've beaten a lot of good teams. They went into Arizona. They won that series. That was a huge moment. They beat the Orioles at home. They've had these really good series. Even just what they did in Toronto. Yes, that team, not a playoff team, but you get no hit. You're about to lose a series, and you find your way. This Mets team has shown resilience all year long. I am not doubting them by any stretch of the imagination. With that said, they have not played a game as intense as the one they're going to play on Friday night all season long. The playoff atmosphere that's going to be there in Philadelphia with those fans who are sitting at a magic number of 9 to win the NL East for the first time since 2011, those fans are going to be rabid. Mets fans hate Phillies fans. Phillies fans hate Mets fans, and these two teams aren't supposed to like each other either. So this is going to be a really fun series, and if the Mets can come out victorious, I think they can carry that momentum. And I'll also say, I was talking to my dad about this after the game on Wednesday. We're Giants fans for football. So he brought up the 2007 Giants team that won the Super Bowl and what they did against the Patriots the final week of the regular season. For those of you who don't remember, who aren't football fans, the Patriots, they were undefeated that year. They ended up 18-1, losing that game to the Giants in the Super Bowl to close out their season. But those two teams met week 17 of the regular season, with the Patriots looking to be the first team ever to go 16-0. So they were going to play all their starters. The Giants chose to do that as well in a game that didn't matter for them. They were already in the playoffs. But they played it out, and they nearly beat the Patriots, and that gave them a mental edge going into the Super Bowl, where they knew they could hang with them. I think the same thing stands true in this series. You go into Philadelphia and you beat the Phillies, you know that you can beat any team in any ballpark anytime. Because the Phillies this year, by a lot of different things, like for one, their record, have been the best team in baseball. And they've had stretches where they've been utterly dominant. This is an opportunity for the Mets to prove themselves. And I'm excited to see how they come out of it, because they got some pretty good pitchers going. They got a real shot here. And there is definitely a chance that these two teams not only will meet these 7 times in the next 10 games, but a couple weeks after that, they might just meet in October. If you look at the bracket here, let me pull this up. The tentative playoff bracket, because I believe the Mets, if things ended the way that they are today, I don't think that they would face the Phillies. I think it would be the Dodgers, and we're getting really far ahead of ourselves, but let's just play this out for fun. Right now, the way it works, the Mets would play the Brewers because they're the 6th seed, and that would set them up for a matchup against the Dodgers in the NLDS, because 2 should play 3. They assume 3 will beat 6 as far as the seeding goes. And then on the other side of the bracket, you have the 4-5 matchup, the 2 wildcard teams facing off against the Phillies. Whoever wins that would play the Phillies in the NLDS. Now, there's a world of the Phillies hold on to that 1 and the Mets end up in the 4 or the 5 seed, in which case you could see Philadelphia in the NLDS, where you go right back to Philly to start off that series. Now, the other perspective of it is the Dodgers could catch the Phillies down the stretch, and the Mets might stay in that 6th spot, in which case you would still see the Phillies in the NLDS. So you got a 50-50 shot, if you do make the playoffs and you do advance, of seeing Philly, depending on how the bracket shakes out. So these teams really could be on a collision course that not only is just what we're going to see coming up here, but could be a really interesting NLDS. So again, this is a chance for the Mets to gain a mental edge on the Phillies. If they beat them up down the stretch, that might just end up carrying over into October. What I want to talk about next, though, is actually previewing the series. How are the Phillies playing up to this point lately? What are the pitching matchups? We'll go through all of it in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Tonal. When life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. With Tonal, you can get efficient workouts personalized just for you that are available with the amount of time you have. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. Powered by AI, Tonal learns with every rep, so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you And unlike other traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to help you advance your training techniques. From professional athletes to the Mama 3, Tonal is trusted by thousands who have become their strongest. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com and promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. All right, so let's talk about this series a little bit here. The Phillies have been the best team in baseball in some respects this season, and it all started the beginning of the year where they opened up their season going 40-11 through May. So they were red hot to start the season. They went 15-11 in June, so not quite at the same insane record-breaking pace that they're winning games to start the year, but they still finished June with a 55-22 record. Now they went through some struggles in the dog days, a 10-14 July, a 15-13 August. But if you think about August, or if you break down August, I should say, a little bit more finely, you'll notice they won 6 of their last 8 games in August. So, since then, since those last 8 in August, and then carried it over into the first 10 games of September, where they've won 8 of those 10. The Philadelphia Phillies are 14-4 in their last 18 games. They just swept the Tampa Bay Rays. This is why I'm saying don't count on this Phillies team to collapse. They're certainly not trending that way. Over the last 15 games, Kyle Schwarber has hit 7 home runs. Both him and Bryce Harper have an OPS over 1,000. So those two guys are red hot. Trey Turner swinging the bat pretty good as well. Looking at the pitching matchups. Game 1 tonight, Jose Quintana versus Aaron Nola. Nola's got a 3.41 ERA in the season. Obviously, the Phillies have a big edge here in the pitching matchup, but Jose Quintana's on a heater. He's allowed 1 earned run over his last 3 starts and 18 innings pitched. Can he keep that up against this potent Phillies lineup? I don't know. I really don't. I think it's a good thing that the Mets had an off day leading into this. The bullpen will be rested. I would imagine if the Mets were to score some runs on Aaron Nola early and Jose Quintana just gets through the first 4 innings, and let's just say the Mets have we'll call it a 4-1 lead in the 5th inning, and Jose Quintana gives up a leadoff double. That bullpen is going to be up. They are going to be ready to go, and they will be in the game quickly. I expect Jose Quintana to have a shorter leash and all of it starts down the stretch, really, just based on the fact that the Mets have off days, they have extra pitchers. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next segment as it relates to Kodai Senga, but not that I don't trust Quintana, but against a lineup like this, it's just something that you have to take in mind, that they could have a quick hook on him if things start to go sideways. Now, if the Mets find their way to a victory in Game 1, which would be a remarkable development considering the fact that Aaron Nola is starting again for the Phillies, if they win that game, they go into Game 2 with a huge edge because Luis Severino will be taking on Colby Allard. Now, Allard is a 27-year-old lefty, has a 5.92 career ERA, most of that spent with the Texas Rangers. This year, Allard has pitched in 4 games for the Phillies, has done well, a 3.50 ERA, but in the minor leagues, he's got a 5.66 ERA and a little over 90 innings pitched. So this is not a guy you should fear. The Mets can hit him, and Severino has looked really good his last couple times out. I can see him being a big game pitcher here and delivering. And if that happens, best case scenario, you stole Game 1, you win Game 2, and you're sitting pretty on Sunday. Or another scenario, you win one of the first 2 games, and then you got David Peterson on the mound in a rubber match. And that would be a matchup of 2 lefties. The way it's currently projected, it would be Peterson versus Christopher Sanchez. Now, Sanchez has had the better season. He's been healthy and around all year. He's got a... Did I mark this wrong? Does he really have a 2.33 ERA, or did I mark it wrong? I did mark it wrong. I was like, I don't think that's right. I was like, is Christopher Sanchez a Cy Young candidate? Probably not. But no, he has been sensational for the Phillies. 3.33 ERA for Philadelphia. He's 10-9 for his record, which I know we don't care about that too much anymore. But when you have a team that wins as many games as the Phillies, it is interesting to look at. Overall, though, he has pitched 165 innings in 28 starts. So he has been a consistent arm for them. Not an easy matchup by any stretch, but also I think a guy the Mets can still obviously handle. You look at this series, and it's going to be a dogfight. It really is. But I like the fact that they decided to go to David Peterson. There was some debate on that. They could have gone to Tyler McGill, and you got two of your best three pitchers on the hill. You got a couple lefties going for the Phillies, which means the right-handed lineup. So Mark Vientos, Pete Alonso, JD Martinez, all these guys get a chance to maybe hit some short porch home runs in Philly against some lefties. Obviously, Jose Iglesias is better against lefties. He'll be in there. And then Starling Marte should be in there for both of those games against the lefties, I would imagine. I mean, he might start game one of this series against Aaron Nola. But if you do that, you're either going to play him all three games or maybe DH on one of the games against the lefty, or I guess bench him. So if it was me, I think I might bench Marte for this first game, let him get a little extra rest, and then have him available to come off the bench, and then have those two games against the lefties to close out the series. But regardless, this is going to be a series to behold. I cannot wait to watch these games. And hopefully the Mets can come out of it with a series victory, because, again, that is going to really have some ramifications for them moving forward in a positive light, to be able to carry that momentum back into a homestand where the Mets are going to have to do really well. You want to go home feeling good on that flight on Sunday. So we'll see exactly how this breaks for the Mets. But either way, must-watch television. What I want to talk about in the final segment, though, is the Mets' decision to start David Peterson on Sunday. What that means for how they're going to slate their rotation for the rest of the season, and also a report by Andy Martino about Kodai Senga's impending availability. So we'll go through all that next. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today, where you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. You can also play across sports. So this weekend, maybe you're planning on watching some football. You can take a football player and a baseball player. You can go and add multiple different guys from different sports on the same entry and try to win big. Run your game on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which players aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn sports opinions into real money all season long. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. If that's not enough, be sure to check out FanDuel's Profit Boost in the app and use it for FanDuel's double your winnings for all of Sunday, September 15th, pregame moneyline bets. Profit Boost will be live starting Thursday, the 12th. View your account page now to learn more about your boost. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sports book. All right, so Andy Martino did a little reporting for SNY today, talking about the Mets' decision to have David Peterson start in this series and what it means down the stretch. And as he said, this lines things up for the Mets to have their starting rotation against the Braves in Atlanta in the final week of the season. Be Luis Severino, David Peterson, and Sean Manaea. And we've been talking about that a lot on this show. How would the Mets plan things out down the stretch? And the one thing I've told you is you want to have those three guys start in that series against the Braves, and also that Sean Manaea would continue to start on regular rest from here on out. So what does that mean for this team? Well, looking at the road ahead, Quintana, Sevy, Peterson this weekend, Sean Manaea on Monday, Tuesday, probably Tyler McGill, unless Paul Blackburn is all of a sudden available. Wednesday, it would be Quintana against Washington. Your next series against the Phillies, it would be Severino, Peterson, Manaea, and then probably one of McGill or Blackburn because Quintana would not be available to pitch unless it's on short rest. Now, they could throw him on short rest on a pitch count or have him piggyback one of these guys because there's a good chance that Quintana would not start until the final series of the season against the Brewers. So he's going to have plenty of rest in between if he doesn't pitch until then. So the Mets would be, wise to try to work him into that series against the Phillies in some capacity. So we'll see exactly what they do on that front. But it all leads up again to the Monday off day before that series against the Braves, and then having your guys ready to go for Severino, Peterson, and Manaea. Now, here's the last part about this, though. Andy Martino, in his article today, talked about Kodai Senga. And the Mets are believing more and more that Senga will be eligible, not just eligible, will be available to return when he's eligible on September 25th, when he can come off the IL. So, what does that mean? Well, they do not want to have him come out of the bullpen. That's what Andy Martino wrote in the article. They want him to still be a starting pitcher because they don't want to mess with his schedule, have him throw out of the bullpen, risk injury. They're not going to do that. So if Kodai Senga pitches, it's as a starter, but more an opener because he's not going to have 80, 90 pitches to start. It's probably going to be 40. So if that's the case, how do you utilize that to your advantage? And one of the things that Martino suggested in the article was having someone like Quintana piggyback Senga. So you have the right-hander open the game. A team might want to counter by putting all their lefties in the lineup. And then you put a Quintana in the third inning and see if he can get you from the third through maybe the seventh. And if you have a lead, hand it off to your bullpen. It's a good strategy. Having Senga go in that series against the Braves, to me, would probably be a mistake. And the only reason I say that, we just saw David Peterson start on extra rest, right? And it was the worst version of Peterson we've seen in a while. If the decision were mine, you have the opportunity here for Peterson to pitch on Sunday, which you will. Then you're going to turn around, have him pitch against the Phillies the following weekend. He's not going to pitch in that Washington series because he's going on Sunday. But he can pitch again on regular rest. Have him turn back around. It might be a little bit extra rest because you have the off day on Monday. But let me think about this here. If Peterson was going to pitch Friday in Philly, you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And yeah, so actually that would line up for him again to pitch on regular rest, which is what I want to see down the stretch. And I don't want to see him pitch on regular rest, but out of the bullpen. David Peterson is going 7 innings in some of these starts. David Peterson is in the flow of a regular season. He's stretched out. He's ready to go. Kodai Senga, while he has immense upside, if that's immense upside for 2 innings, save that. And maybe you need to win some of those games in Milwaukee, and that's the time to pitch him. You can go Senga to Quintana. You could have Quintana start one of those games and have Senga pitch part of a bullpen game. We'll see what matters and what doesn't down the stretch here for the Mets, and that'll really point the Mets in which direction they want to go with Kodai Senga. But to me, Kodai Senga is not an instrument to get you into the playoffs. He is a weapon for the playoffs. And that's the distinction I would make with it. So you want to get him those game reps. You want him to be stretched out as quickly as possible because if everything breaks your way, it would be amazing if Kodai Senga could legitimately build himself up to be a starting pitcher that can go 5, 6, 7 innings if you were to make a deep run. Now, I don't think even if he got to the NLDS, he's going to give you that. But if he got one appearance against the Brewers at 40 pitches and then he came out of the bullpen in the wild card round, or if they had to open him, I'd understand if he's up to maybe 60 pitches and maybe he can go. If it is a game 3, you're putting your best pitcher out on the mound and you're saying, all right, Kodai, get us through 4 innings. Yes, there's a world where it makes sense if he can get up to 60 pitches. But if you only have 40 pitches for Kodai Senga, I almost wish they would reevaluate and see if you could pitch him out of the bullpen. Let him do his same starter's routine, all of that stuff, and maybe you just go into an outing with the mindset of, all right, if David Peterson is starting game 3 of the wildcard round, no matter how great he looks, after 5 we're going to Kodai Senga. I don't know. I don't know how they figure it out. To me, Kodai Senga is this tantalizing option, and I understand why the Mets want to use him if they can, and I'm completely for it. But I still think that this team goes as far as Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, and David Peterson takes them. Those are the 3 starting pitchers I would be looking to rely on. And having Kodai Senga mess with Peterson in any way, I just don't know if that is the best way to go about winning down the stretch. We'll see, though. We'll see. It's going to be really interesting. David Peterson has pitched out of the bullpen before, so I don't want it to seem like he couldn't figure that out. I like Peterson's ability to maybe go out there and give you 7 innings in some big games. And if Kodai Senga can't do that, he's a lot less valuable in my eyes. Doesn't mean he doesn't have a role. But I loved the idea of Senga being able to get himself ready to go, and boom, you can drop Kodai Senga into the 7th inning of a playoff game. That was such an exciting possibility to me. Having him start that game instead and be lights out as an opener, yeah, maybe there is room for that, because you can go through the top of the lineup. If it is, you're facing off against, let's say it's the Diamondbacks or even the Brewers, right? Let's actually say Brewers, if things stay exactly how they are. So you face the Brewers in that first round. That Brewers team has become a lineup that is really relying on 3 guys. Jackson Chourio, the rookie, Willie Adames, the shortstop, and William Contreras, their catcher. So if you have Kodai Senga handle their first at-bats, maybe it does make sense. The good news for the Mets is he could impact the team in some way. So we'll just see how the Mets set themselves up to use him. What are the games looking like down the stretch? Are they facing elimination? Are they clinching early? Best case scenario, you clinch when you play the Braves, and then you can just play around with Kodai Senga however you want to in that series against the Brewers, where it's a less stress environment. It's just about him getting his work in and seeing how you will be able to utilize him come October. First things first, though, you got to beat the Phillies. It's going to be a great series. I should have mentioned at the top of the show, but obviously if you're watching on YouTube, it was audio only today. I am on vacation. I mentioned this on yesterday's show, visiting my sister and her family for my birthday. I will still be doing shows all weekend long, so make sure if you're listening on the audio side, you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. The goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. I'm talking about Locked On Sports Today with your local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.